Good morning. I want to welcome you to our Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Christie?
Here.
Supervisor Elias?
Presente.
Supervisor Miller? Here. Supervisor Valadez?
Present.
Chair Bronson?
Here.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. And now please rise for the invocation to be offered by Rabbi Yehudi Setlin, Chabad Tucson, with the Pledge of Allegiance to follow, to be offered by Supervisor Elias.
Almighty God, please bless our supervisors as they gather to conduct the business of Pima County, Arizona. Today's agenda includes a discussion of the policy on public record requests. You too keep extensive records which cover everything that is said and done in this world. As the sage Rabbi Yehuda the Prince said, one can live an altruistic life by contemplating three things. There's an eye that sees all, an ear that hears all, and all our deeds are recorded. Or, as they used to tell us in school, everything goes on our permanent record. Right now, there doesn't seem to be any way for us to access those public records in heaven, but you have indicated that this won't always be so. As the biblical prophet Habakkuk said, that one day a stone will call out from the wall, and a beam from the woodwork will answer it, telling us all what they had witnessed. Transparency indeed. Let us bear this in mind and try to make sure that our permanent records, when they are released, will be a credit to us and to you, and may your will as always be done. Amen.
And once again, Rabbi, you've outdone yourself. Okay, and it looks like we have a class of journalism students joining us. Tom, you want to tell us who they are?
Yes, Madam Chair. A class of reporting public affairs students from the University of Arizona who are learning how to keep tabs on all of them.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Madam
All right.
Chair,
Supervisor,
I'd ask for a moment of personal privilege.
proceed.
Just wanted to make note of the fact that yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, and we had an excellent march that took place yesterday from Martin Luther King Boulevard up Campbell there to 22nd Street, and a nice gathering of people there at Reed Park to commemorate a truly great American that has impacted all of our lives. And I just want to make sure everybody knows that it was a good event and was well attended, and it's nice to see Tucsonans talking about things that bring us together.
I would echo those thoughts, particularly in these challenging times. Thank you for those comments. We do have one correction to the agenda, amendment to the agenda, and that is on the consent calendar, page 8, item 8, contract and award procurement. It's a correction to the funding source percentage. The source did read 45%, ADOT land purchase. It should read 47%. And if there are no objections, we'll so amend the agenda. And with that, we get to the best part of the meeting, and that is we get to meet Morning Glory. Pause for pause.
I'm your students. You must be a student.
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is the first time I've gotten a chance to speak with everyone at the start of the year. Just so everybody is aware.
And introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. My name's Adam Rickey. I'm the Chief Animal Protection Officer over at the Pima Animal Care Center. So today I have Morning Glory. She's a 2 to 3 month old kitten. She's a little torty. She's very chatty. If you haven't already heard her over on the side making a lot of noise. And one of the things that we're getting ready for at PAC is kitten season. Kitten season starts in the springtime for us, where we're going to start getting a large influx. Be cooperative. And we're getting a large influx of kittens and you mean mother cats that are out in the community. We have a lot of programs in place to help keep the number of cats that we have in the community down through our TNR program, which is Trap, Neuter, Return. Has had some pretty amazing effects on PAC and also the community over the last few years. So what we want to be able to do is talk with people a little bit about fostering. Every time we get these mothers in with their kittens, they're a little bit too young to be spayed, neutered, and adopted out, and we want to keep them with their mother for a period of time. So we're always looking for people who would be willing to foster, and the rumor is if you foster a mother with her kittens, you have your choice in the kitten that you'd like to adopt. So that way, it comes with a little bit of a perk, and you can keep them all if you choose to. We don't need them back at the shelter, but we want to talk a little bit about that. But also at the same time, today I was going to bring an older dog. His name's Darby. He's about 10 years old. He's one of our senior residents, and I wanted to talk about giving a new lease on older pets for the new year. Everybody's always looking for young, small, and cute. However, we have a lot of older dogs that still have a lot of life to give and can be very good companions. Unfortunately, I couldn't bring Darby because a volunteer decided to take him for like the longest walk of the morning, and so I was literally waiting for something for him to come back, and he never came back. So hopefully when I get back to the shelter, he'll be there, and I'll get to play with him a little bit then. If anybody has any questions, just let me know.
Just want to remind everybody, dogs have masters and cats have servants, so if you're that, you need to realize that.
Yes, and that is very true, highly independent. They do their own thing. Anything that they do not like, they will happily take off of flat surfaces for you.
Right. Well, speaking as an old dog, we hope you're generous and are able to find a home for this little kitty. And, please think about if you know other students who want a kitty right now, or if you live in a house that's really in need of having a great companion like that. Beautiful cat. I hope you're generous and please give this animal a home.
And for those doing journalism, people really love pet stories, just so you know.
They're much better than public reporting, right? It's a human interest thing.
All right. Not going to touch that one, Sharon.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, but goodbye, Morning Glory. Hopefully you'll have a home by the evening. All right, we are now going to move on call to the public. I want to remind everybody you have 3 minutes. Please abide by the rules of civility. And with that, Jerry Ottoboni.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and Board of Supervisors. My name is Jerry Ottoboni and I live in Oro Valley. Well, I was at a function with a bunch of seniors who spent most of the time talking about how Mr. Huckleberry had not been able to live within his budget and raise their taxes. While they are on fixed incomes, he must not like seniors. Then he's trying to, in addition, raise our gas taxes. Several reports state that administrators who raise gas taxes do so because they can't live within their budget and their means, and which they expect us to do, of course. And the additional money usually goes to their pet projects and cronies, not to the roads. One other thing, because of Huckleberry's dangerous worldviews explosion, many people are shuttling up to Phoenix and not flying out of Tucson Airport. Thank you.
Kurt Larson.
I'm Kurt Larson, and I live in the Tucson Estates area, and I'm a member of the Friends of Tucson Mountain Park. We are a citizen group that advocates for the preservation of the remaining natural areas in Tucson Mountain Park. We want the Board of Supervisors to know that the Pima County Parks Department is building a new network of trails into the open spaces of the park. We are opposed to the new trails because they threaten the integrity of the open spaces by dividing them into sections that are too small to function as open space. Public access for walkers, mountain bikers, and horseback riders is well served by the park's existing trail system. Before we destroy any more of our precious mountain desert to build new trails, we should consider that Tucson Mountain Park is probably one of the finest pieces of real estate that we own. Let's not degrade its natural and historical character without careful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you'd like to share your remarks with the board, we'd be happy to post them on our webpage.
You mean the paper copy?
Yeah, if that's.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, share that with the clerk, and then we'll put it up on our website. And I thank you for coming. Roger Score, and just as point of information for you, sir, we've got a community information night at Tucson Estates at the end of February, and you might want to attend that and voice your concerns.
Oh, a community
Community
presentation?
Yes, Pima County Community Information Nights at the end of February. And we've got your contact information, so we'll send you an email.
Oh, no, I think I can.
Go ahead, Roger.
Board Chair, I'm here to discuss the resolutions you bring about that are not part of your job as board members. We elected you people to represent our best interest and promote laws, regulations that affect us and benefit the citizens of Arizona. So say if you were to bring forth a resolution in regards to DACA, to start with, that's a federal issue. That's a distraction so that we don't focus on your failure to do the job we elected you for. That we don't focus on the money that you gave to American Airlines, the $15 million you gave to Worldview, a private company, that we don't focus on the $1.5 million that you donated to the Giffords Memorial downtown. You don't want us to focus on where our money went. You don't want us to focus on the failed roads. So instead of doing your job, you focus on the job that federal government's elected to do. But we didn't elect you to represent us at a federal level. We elected you to take care of business here at home. So who you're working for is not the people. You're working for special interests, American Airlines, the people at Worldview, people from other states that have invested interest here that want to fleece the taxpayer. That's who you're operating for. The citizens of foreign nations that want to come here. Now, if you promote DACA, the first thing you ought to do is bring about a benefit that DACA people would bring to the citizens of Arizona. Bring about a benefit to us. Do they promote a better chance of our children going to college? Do they promote better jobs for us? Do they promote better roads for us? What benefit do they directly bring to me and my children and my family? That's the only reason to pass it, because you don't represent Mexico. You represent me and the people in this room. But our failed media, what you journalist students are going to learn is you got to support these people.
Thank you, Mr. Score. Christopher Cole.
Here we go again. My name is Christopher Cole, and I am the chair of the Pima County Libertarian Party. The Pima County Board of Supervisors some time ago passed a resolution opposing I-11. At your last meeting, a person from Avra Valley handed you the paperwork for a lawsuit, saying that your continued support for Avra Valley harmed him and the people in his area. Now, I'm no lawyer, so don't take this as legal advice. But if you're going to defend yourself in that lawsuit, one thing you might do is prove that the actions of Mr. Huckleberry were taken in opposition to your instructions. Take official action against Mr. Huckleberry, saying you're working with ADOT to force I-11 on the people is wrong, is in violation of your instructions, and discipline him. I would suggest that if you do discipline him, you make him pay restitution. Pay back all of the county money he has spent in violation of your orders. That would be proper. And maybe, just maybe, the money can be used instead of for something that nobody wants except certain select cronies. Maybe the money can be used for something everybody wants. Good roads. You don't have an income problem. You've got a spending problem. You don't prioritize what you do sufficiently. Public safety and public infrastructure are your higher priorities. Those will bring in jobs and keep jobs from fleeing more than crony deals with Gabrielle Gifford's husband. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Jenny.
Thank you, Supervisors. I'm Tom Jenny. I'm with the Arizona chapter of Americans for Prosperity. I was born and raised in Tucson, and I now live up in a city called Phoenix, which is about 2 hours north here on the freeway. We are here we're a taxpayer watchdog organization, among other things, grassroots, and we're here to honor with a special award Supervisor Allie Miller. She is to receive our 2017 Local Hero Award for the local government official. We think he's doing the best job to defend taxpayers against excessive government spending and regulation and taxes. So, and I have composed a little poem, some doggerel for you guys, so bear with me on that. And we'll be up in 3 minutes, I'm sure. 'Twould take too long for here to tally the things we laud in our dear alley. Indulge me, please, and do not rue, as I do list a very few. To spending she would take an axe and fight against each new sales tax, push for roads and beat down bond. Of contracts crony, she's not too fond. In Star and Weekly she takes her lumps, but blame her not for holes and bumps. Derided much and called a loon, but voted not for flame balloon. And how respond ye ruling three to this your buzzing, stinging bee? We hope that you will oft give thanks for dissenting voice within your ranks. And so we give this jackalope to show to Allie sign of hope. We wish her well and best of luck in future tangles with the Chuck. It doesn't look
Thank Supervisor Elias. Keith Van Hannigan.
I don't know, that thing is Chevy, man. Better than a brick, yeah.
Not as clean. Bricks don't have fleas.
Maybe we could raise taxes and make it better so they don't shed. People $26 million out of it.
Mr. Hannigan.
Good morning, Pima County, and wow, I am not going to follow that with a poem. I'm going to stand here. I'm torn between my home colors and Hispania. Soccer fields, oh boy. We don't need soccer fields, Chuck. I have a nephew who's going to probably end up on the Olympic team. He plays a lot in Phoenix, California, around the country, but not Tucson, guys. We got enough already. Phoenix has enough already. So, a velodrome, let's see. The average bike goes for what? $750 to $15,000 for a velodrome track bike. I used to pedal my butt off quite a bit when I was a kid. There's a bike path that runs up and down Pinellas County. It was based on the old railroad tracks. I started working on that when I was about 14 years old. It was completed about 5 years ago. It's a nice thing, simple thing. Didn't cost anywhere near $100 million. And by the way, the roads in Pinellas County, where I'm from, they're beautiful. But that's what real tourism does for a state and a locality. It's what real money does when it's given to a real government, and a real government spends it properly. Now, I do demand a nice investigation of worldview and what's really going on, where the money's going, how dangerous it is. I want to know the flight schedule. I want to be there for the next explosion. I want to record that puppy. Come on, I've been chasing that thing since the chicken sandwich went up. It's a joke. And I don't blame just Democrats for all this. Trust me. Ray Carroll was here for years, and he helped out quite a bit. So, you guys keep on keeping on. Let me know if you want to dig a tunnel under I-10. I can help you out with that. I used to build roads and such. But like I say, you don't need it, and it's our money, not yours, Chuck. We got 3 more years of this, people. You know that, right? We got 3 more years. Thanks.
Russell Trask.
Happy day. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I think I'm getting better at public speaking thanks to you. I'm here, as usual, to talk about public safety and infrastructure. Pima County gets an F on infrastructure, obviously. They also get an F on public safety, obviously. On the other hand, you get an A for parks, and you also get an A for bike paths. I don't think it's anything to be proud of. Please spend our money you're collecting on what you are collecting it for. It's public safety and infrastructure. We are the voters, and we will vote. And it may not be 3 years from now. Thank you.
Wendell Long.
Thank you, Honorable Chairwoman and Honorable Board of Supervisors. I think there's one theme in every single one of these called the audience, and they all mention roads. So I'm just reminding you, I'm Wendell Long, the chairman of the STAC, the Sales Tax Advisory Committee, and we're having a double header in public meetings tomorrow, one in Green Valley and one at Picture Rocks. One in the morning at 8:30 is Green Valley, and then 6 p.m. at Picture Rocks. So invite everyone to come. As you know, we've been charged with making an opinion on a recommendation of the Board of Supervisors whether a half-cent sales tax should be implemented to improve our roads. So we would love to hear from as many people in the public as possible. More information is on the website, pima.gov/sales tax. I want to personally thank Supervisor Christie and Supervisor Valadez for coming to our meetings. Both of you have been very helpful on that. Also, Mr. Huckleberry, I want to thank you for loaning us some of your professional staff. Nicole and Desiree have been wonderful. So once again, like to see all of you out there. Love to hear from you. The meetings have been great. We've been getting great information from there. So hope you all can come. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long, for your service. We really appreciate it. Ana Karina Rodriguez. Ms. Rodriguez. Oh, there you are.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, Pima County Supervisors, and Mr. Chuck Huckleberry. My name is Ana Karina Rodriguez. I'm with Mi Familia Vota. We do voter registration in our community, and we also assist new residents to becoming new citizens here in this wonderful country. I'm honored to be standing here today in front of you because I wanted to thank you for creating a resolution to establishing a resolution calling for the U.S. Congress to renew the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Program, also known as DACA, in a timely fashion and to enact comprehensive immigration reform of the immigration system. I'm proud of the work that we do here in our community because there is this dire need for our community to become citizens, to have a pathway and a gateway. Unfortunately, our immigration system is broken. If you do not know, it costs $725 for somebody to become a citizen, and the process takes a long time. I am honored to be standing here to represent my friends who I've gone to school with. I have a friend, Andrea. I'm not going to mention her last name, but she had to pay triple the amount of tuition that I had to pay in order to get a college education. She was the top in our class, and now she's a teacher. And she is depending on DACA so that she can continue to work in our community, she can continue to be a teacher, and so she can continue to educate students. She is so passionate and she's so driven, and that's why I'm here today to thank you, because there are people in our community who depend on this. There are people in our community who depend on DACA, who want to contribute back to this country that they call home, because they've been here since they were little. They know nothing about the country that they were born in, but they know that they love this country and that they would do anything to work hard. They're dedicated, and they will continue to fight for what is right. And that is to continue to be a part of this community, to continue to establish themselves, and to give back. So thank you again for bringing this resolution. It's so important, and it's so honorable to be working in Pima County, where we have great leaders like yourself who are standing up for dreamers and putting this resolution together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Thank you for all your advocacy. That concludes our speakers that call to the public. We have 6 executive session items. I'd entertain a motion to move into exec. There's a motion. Is there a second? I'll second.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor.
I have a conflict on addendum item number 3 with the Raytheon lawsuit. I just wanted to.
So you're going to
point that-
recuse yourself from that item
Yes.
when we hear it in exec? Okay.
No, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Is you going to step out of executive session?
She's going to step out of executive
Okay.
session
Right.
at the point in time we're hearing that. So
And
we'll
then you're
hear
not going to
that.
vote on it as well?
No.
Okay,
I just
no.
wanted to verify what we're doing because
Yeah.
it didn't quite make sense.
And we'll hear that item last in exec, so.
Sure.
There's motion and a second to move into exec. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll convene in exec now and then reconvene in regular session at the sound of the gavel. Session. We had 6 executive session items. Counselor?
Madam Chair, executive session item 6 on the agenda is a request for approval to waive potential conflicts of interest to allow Coppersmith Brockelman PLC to represent Pima County and to represent new or existing clients in matters involving Pima County that are not substantially related to Coppersmith Brockelman's representation of Pima County. County Attorney's Office and County Administrator recommend approving the requested conflict waiver.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Valadez.
I move that for the approval of the conflict waiver as described by the County Attorney's Office.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to the addendum. Counselor?
Madam Chair, executive session item 1 on the addendum is a proposed settlement in WBCMT 2007-C31 South Algernon Way LLC versus Pima County, Arizona Tax Court case number TX 2017-001656. This is a proposed settlement in this tax appeal matter. The County Attorney's Office and County Administrator recommend approval of the proposed settlement.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Valadez.
move approval and the County Attorney's recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections. Hearing none, motion carries. Item 2, Counselor.
Madam Chair, executive session item 2 on the addendum involves a third-party complaint filed against Pima County in the case Bill Staples, Pima County Assessor versus HSL Tucson National Apartments LLC, Arizona Tax Court case number TX 2017-000374. County Attorney's Office seeks the board's informed consent to joint representation of the assessor and county in this matter and to defend the third-party complaint against the county as discussed in executive session.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the County Attorney's recommendation and proceed as discussed in the executive session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections. Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on. Item 3, at this point, Supervisor Miller is going to leave the dais. She has a conflict. What's the pleasure of the board on item 3, Counselor?
Madam Chair, executive session item 3 on the addendum involves a tax appeal matter, Raytheon Company versus Pima County and Bill Staples, Arizona Tax Court case number TX 2017-000465. County Attorney's Office seeks authorization to defend Pima County in the appeal as discussed in executive session.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item number 3 as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Supervisor Miller, you may rejoin us. Moving on to item 4, which is in conjunction with item 6.
Yes, Madam Chair, executive session items 4 and 6 on the addendum both involve Pima County and Pima County Flood Control District versus Michelle Cabrera and Rosemont Copper Company, Maricopa County Superior Court case number LC 2017-001444-001DT. County Attorney's Office and County Administrator recommend against further appeal in this matter.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I move that we proceed as discussed in the executive session as outlined by the County Attorney and County Administrator.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Before we move on to the next item, I think it's appropriate we move to the regular agenda and item 11, employment as outside counsel for review of county attorney racketeering funds. What's the pleasure of the board on this item as relates to the engagement of Artie Eves?
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Valadez.
Relative to both those items, I move that we retain outside counsel, and that would be item 11, and that we proceed as discussed in the executive session.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. That brings us to the end of our executive session items.
Madam Chair.
Oh, one more, I'm sorry, yes. Counselor.
Madam Chair, executive session item 7 on the addendum seeks direction regarding a potential lawsuit by the Pima County Stadium District against Pecos League of Professional Baseball Clubs, LLC, for payment of stadium service fees. The County Attorney's Office seeks direction on whether to file a lawsuit on behalf of the Stadium District. The County Administrator recommends filing the lawsuit.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I move that we proceed and file the lawsuit on the matter and proceed as discussed in the executive session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. Now we move on to the Board of Supervisors sitting as other boards, Library District Board. I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. Then we're on to the approval of the consent calendar. Does the board, any board member wish to divide the question on the consent calendar?
Madam Chair, I'd like to divide the question and discuss and vote on item 1, 6, and 7 separately, please.
1, 6, and 7.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
Madam Chair, I'll move the remainder of consent as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 1, I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Miller.
I had several questions on this one. This was a house that was purchased, and almost $400,000 was spent in 2017 to rehab that home to house this nonprofit. Was this money general fund money that was spent to do the rehab?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
No, actually, I believe it was bond funds that were used.
Was bond funds?
Affordable housing bond funds, yeah.
Okay. And then the lease is the Real Property Services did a evaluation, which I think I didn't have any issues with. The county is paying water, electric, trash, and recycle for this facility. Is there some sort of a cap on a reasonableness, because it said reasonable utility bills, or is this something that we'll find as we go along?
Facilities have an answer for that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, and these are customary and typical utilities paid by an entity that leases property, and it's simply managed on a month-to-month basis, and typically we've not in the past had any particular problems with anybody doing anything, because, either you leave the water run or, and this doesn't happen.
And this is to house a nonprofit that is doing what they're doing is they're going to be operating as an affordable housing. They're going to be overseeing this function. Are they taking over this complete function for Pima County, or?
No, Madam Chair, and this is, again, they're located in the vicinity of our housing center, and our housing center basically is the converted El Banco building, and this building that we rehabbed was purchased way back in probably 87 or 88 with bond funds. Initially, it was thought to house our public works. Obviously, our public works agencies outgrew it very quickly, and it was reconverted back to the housing center, and it's been that way for a decade or longer. And so this land trust works in conjunction with the housing center to basically try and find affordable housings for community members.
So it isn't going to offset any head count in our department here, our housing center here in Pima County?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, no, because we've always had a cooperative relationship, meaning that we've staffed at minimal levels in order to basically delegate to other private nonprofit entities actual carrying out work.
Okay. And the other interesting note I'll note on here is that the insurance coverages for this facility are $2 million per occurrence, the liability, and it appears everything else is in order. And this agency has been around for how long?
Madam Chair, ever since I can remember.
So into the last century?
Yeah, probably. They've been,
No, it actually, the land trust has been around for about 10 years, actually.
Okay.
And developing housing opportunities for home purchase for low-income families.
Okay.
So kind of a unique model that they follow. They're a regular independent nonprofit that have been operating here in Pima County, and a corporation of the state of Arizona in good standing The one thing I would note on the high amount of insurances, this is a historic home, and it is located in one of our historic neighborhoods as well. And it's a bit of an encroachment, if you will, having a private enterprise being on a residential street like that. But El Banco and that particular property, I think the neighbors have embraced as their own and recognized that they're good neighbors and that they're good neighbors to all of us here in the county, in reality.
Okay, when I went through the material, or we contacted, I think it was Margaret on this one, she told us it was in a historic neighborhood, but not a historic home. Is that, and
No, it's
especially,
correct. It is a historic home as well.
it is, but with the $400,000 rehab, it probably, I don't know if it's still.
It was in very,
historic.
very poor condition and had been allowed to go that way for a long period of time. It also has a big yard, and there was some other stuff that needed to be removed there along with it, and a coach house that also needed to be repaired along with it. So the rehab on it was expensive, but frankly, it's a beautiful opportunity and a good place for us. Even if we were to get out of the business of affordable housing completely, I think it's a great asset for us to own that we could recoup all of that money on.
Thank you.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 6, I'll move the item.
Second.
Supervisor Miller.
Madam Chair, as I went through, this is for the building of the design for the interpretive exhibits for both the Pima County Visitor Center and the U of A Mineral Museum in the old courthouse. I noticed that this is a cost plus fixed fee contract. I wonder why we didn't do a competitive bid and went to a cost plus fixed fee. The first part of this contract was roughly $1 million, and now this second part is $1.5 million. And based on the numbers, I calculated the fixed fee is about 22.5%. First question is, why wasn't it competitively bid?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, professional services aren't competitively bid. They are procured through qualification-based processes. This original architect had the highest qualification-based response to rehabbing a historic structure. The fee for this work is higher than normal because of the exhibits themselves, and typically exhibit space in museums and other interpretive centers are higher than you would have if you were simply doing a tenant improvement. So that's the relationship between the fee and the service being provided. And the continuation using the same architect is still in response to the professional-based, qualification-based selection process.
Is, excuse me, I noticed that he's the subcontractor to Poster Frost Murto is Ralph Applebaum.
Yes.
Is Ralph Applebaum also going to do the actual construction?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, the actual construction will be part of the bidding process associated with the tenant improvements for each of those facilities.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll call the question. Are there any objections?
I object.
One.
I object.
2 objections. Any further objections? Motion carries 3-2. Item 7, I'll move the item.
Second.
And Madam Chair, this special revenue fund, where are these monies coming from?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, all donations, and they're donations that go through our standard donation process and held in that special revenue fund to benefit the construction and development of the January 8th Memorial.
And why are we managing that for them and overseeing all of the efforts on their behalf?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, because it's on our property.
Okay.
Any further questions? Any objections?
I object.
I object.
Any further objections? Motion carries 3-2. Brings us back to the regular agenda. Item 9 is going to be heard last. Moving on to item 10, medical insurance for county employees. I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion,
Madam Chair, if I may.
Supervisor Valadez.
Madam Chair, I think there's some kudos to be had on this item. We have been talking about becoming self-insured was going to be reducing the rate that our employees paid in premiums, and we're finally seeing that come to reality. And I know that our entire employee base, but in particular, but also the HR benefits staff, deserve some kudos for making this a reality and for doing all this work. So from the dais, I want to say thank you to the HR staff and to all our employees, because it was through their efforts that we're seeing this come to pass.
Thank you, Supervisor Valadez. Any further comments? I'll call the question. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. And our HR administrator didn't even have to answer a question. Congratulations. And Gail as well. We've already dealt with item 11. I do not know if Mr. Huckleberry was here at the time, but the direction was to engage and to have the board engage as opposed to the county attorney. All right. Industrial Development Authority and Resolution 2018-3. I'll move the item. Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 13 is unfinished business. It relates to RICO funds. I would like to continue this item for a month until our outside attorney has an opportunity for review.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Valadez.
Madam Chair, Ms. Flagg, this...
Oh, wait, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Ms. Flagg, this won't put undue stress or make things difficult on the county attorney's office?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Valadez, we'd like to see it approved as soon as possible, but we understand under the circumstances, I don't think it's going to cause a hardship to allow outside counsel to review it.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. These are hearings, franchise license and permits, item 14. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address us in opposition to this item at this time? In opposition? If not, I'm going to move we close public hearing and approve the item, subject to the sheriff's report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 15. Hearing P17RZ00004, Arnold Family Trust, North La Cholla Boulevard rezoning. We have a number of speakers. What's the pleasure of the board? Do you wish to hear from the applicant, hear the speakers? How do you want to do?
Well, let's hear staff report.
Well, we've already heard a staff report. This is a continued item. Is there anything else that the staff wants to add? Supervisor Miller.
Madam Chair, I'd like to get an update from the staff on what has transpired since the last meeting, please.
Sure. Madam Chair, Supervisors, this was continued from November 21st. Staff has been part of some of the dialogue. We had a staff, Tom to my left, went out and met with the neighbors. Before then, the neighbors met with the applicant, the consultants, on January 10th. I believe it'd be hard to say that there's full agreement, but I know ideas were explored and shared. Staff has been privy to some of the conversation, and I think the applicant's probably in the best position to provide a full update of what played out.
Do you want to hear from the applicant now, or the applicant? Who's presenting for the applicant?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Brian Underwood, and I'm with the Planning Center 2 East Congress here in Tucson. I'm also joined today by the the property owner and ultimate builder of the project, Kachina Homes, Mr. Mike Arnold and his family, Kevin and Linda, are also here with him today. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for hearing our case again, and to also thank everyone that's been involved in the project since day one. We're excited about this project, and although we weren't able to fully resolve the access issue on McCarty, we had 2 more meetings that provided an opportunity for a constructive dialogue between both sides and led to proposed right-of-way enhancements supported by the developer and county staff that will help improve traffic safety in the area. But before I get into the specifics on that, I'd like to take a step back to describe the development and zoning context of the surrounding area and coordination with neighbors on the, prior to the November 21st board hearing. And then before turning this presentation over to Mike Arnold to discuss his proposal, since this is really a labor of love for him and his son Kevin, who are in this for the long haul, as they will ultimately be the ones that build these homes. When we started working on this plan, we recognized there are some compatibility challenges with a 4-lane thoroughfare on our west side, La Cholla Boulevard, carrying about 15,000 average daily trips each day, and apartments planned to the south, as you can see on this exhibit, 23 townhomes platted to the north, and existing residences in the established neighborhood to the east along Don Road. In addition, the site itself presents internal compatibility challenges caused by a significant grade difference between the 25 proposed homes and the apartments down here in the southern portion of the project. And that difference in elevation and the uses on site, the single-family homes versus multifamily apartments, ultimately lends way to this being 2 separate development projects, and you can see how the apartments planned to the south provide compatibility with the 128 apartments planned here to the south of our apartments. And while the homes complement the future townhome development to the north of the project boundary here. And as part of that compatibility, Mike also restricted the 25 homes to single story to further preserve existing views. So all of those will be single story. With a plan that was approximately half the allowable density under the property's medium intensity urban comprehensive plan designation, the 49 total homes, as opposed to the 13 rack that's allowed under the medium intensity urban, we were able to work with Mike to add more of that custom home builder approach to the design of the roadway, with a wider right-of-way to allow for a meandering sidewalk, as you can see, with a narrower pavement section, street trees, and rainwater harvesting basins, so that when you look down the street, you see courtyards and trees rather than a row of garages. And after hearing concerns at our first meeting about traffic on McCarty, we had a local traffic engineer study the area and prepare a traffic memo that we shared the findings of with surrounding neighbors. We also met with Pima County Department of Transportation staff to discuss traffic calming measures along McCarty, and shared that information with neighbors that attended our second meeting. And Pima County Department of Transportation staff was very receptive to the idea of installing a 3-way stop sign at McCarty Road and Dawn to mitigate concerns about unsafe speeding through the neighborhood. But unfortunately, at our meeting, a consensus could not be reached amongst the neighbors that were for or against, having either speed bumps or some sort of stop sign control. The potential for a traffic signal.
Do you mind if I interrupt? Sir. Why was there an issue with the 3-way stop?
Well, it was so that was information that we took to the meeting to say that county staff is fully in support in terms of that improvement in the public right-of-way, but it would need to garner approval from the surrounding neighbors. So everybody would have to be, or a majority of the neighbors would have to be in agreement to install that improvement.
And what you're saying is they're not?
They're not. No.
Okay.
So the potential for a traffic signal at McCarty and La Cholla was also evaluated in our traffic memo, but with the negligible increase in traffic from this project, a signal was not warranted. And in response to a question posed at that first meeting, we also revised our requests down from CR5 to CR4 to better fit the proposed project and limit future CR5 density on the site. Neighbors asked at our second meeting if we could at least accommodate construction traffic out to La Cholla instead of McCarty, since that remained a primary issue, the homes exiting out onto McCarty. And so After working through some concerns with Pima County Transportation and Development Services staff, who were absolutely fantastic in addressing our concerns, we worked through some concerns about grading and degradation to the on-site drainage between the homes and apartments. You can see that kind of drainage, natural drainage area through the middle here. We were able to share with neighbors at our third neighborhood meeting that site construction traffic would be restricted to La Cholla. DOT staff also explained that there were some soil stabilization issues during the widening of La Cholla that further complement roadway design out to that roadway. Neighbors at our third meeting asked that we consult with Pima County DOT once more about the application of impact fees on neighborhood streets, see if we could apply the developer's impact fees to the neighborhood roads further in on Dawn and McCarty. And they also asked about the removal or trimming of trees in the landscape median along La Cholla, just to improve site visibility as folks are traveling and trying to turn out on McCarty there, or from McCarty there. And the third thing that they asked was for us to look into whether or not a speed limit sign equipped with radar speed indicators could be installed along southbound La Cholla. So those signs that say your speed and they flash that above the speed limit. So after another meeting with Pima County DOT and traffic engineering staff, we learned that impact fees must be spent on projects that add capacity to nearby roadways. However, our meeting helped bring outstanding traffic issues and roadway conditions to the attention of Pima County staff, who were very helpful in explaining that the trees could be trimmed and that a plan for regular maintenance could be put in place. Traffic engineering staff also said they were ordering 2 extra radar speed signs and will install one on La Cholla if it meets the criteria. The developer is also willing to contribute to the cost or installation of that sign if necessary. And we hope that with these neighboring roadway enhancements and with the quality high-end homes Kachina intends to build, this project can be a benefit to the overall area, improve traffic safety, and we respectfully ask for your approval. And I'll turn it over to Mike to talk a little further about some things. Thank you.
Good morning, supervisors. I just want to give you my vision for what I see with this piece of property. None of you have been on it. It stretches out along La Cholla. The 2 pieces of land start and come down, kind of meet 2/3 of the way, and there's a drainage, natural small wash that heads down to La Cholla. When I first put this piece of property in escrow, I didn't know there were apartments to my south. I came down doing my due diligence, met with the county, and found out that the map you have shows CR5 and 2-story apartments right up against that south property line. Because originally I planned on going in here and just doing homes. But I think homes are a pretty tough sell right up against apartments. Those are 2-story, so you got people on balconies looking right into the yard. I have a 35-year history of building custom homes. I can tell you the one thing that kills you is privacy in the yard. It's the one time I made that mistake, and it took 4 years to sell that house. So what I came up with, which also was a way to meet the comprehensive plan, is to put some apartments down in there and keep that project separate from the homes. And take that green area in between and supplement that. That's that little green bit of trees you see between the 2 developments. That's a small wash that runs down through there that I want to supplement and make more of like a riparian area to separate the 2 the best I can. So why it's important for me to keep these 2 separate, when you come into the 25 homes, I want this to look like something that I don't want it to look like the 92% of the homes last year that were built by the national home builders. I don't compete with them. I don't want to look like them. I don't want to look down that street and just see colored tile roofs. I mean, they do a great job with what they do. This will be very different than that. Think of Mercado over here on West Congress. I love that little subdivision. It's 2-story, mine's single, but I love the courtyards of it. You go look at what some of the small builders have done in these areas around downtown in the barrio stuff. some of my favorite stuff in Tucson. I'm a Tucson native. I want to build something here that looks like Tucson. I want to look down that street and see desert trees and not see just a mass of homes. So that's the goal for that. If you take and Supervisor Miller asked us to look at that 2 months ago. We've met with the neighbors twice, and I've talked to the engineers about it, and it just doesn't work for a variety of reasons. One is the grade difference. Those are two different projects. The backs of these houses along that apartment parking lot, there's about a 7-foot retaining wall in there with that wash down below and with the trees. So you're going to blow all that out of there and push a road down through there, which then takes out a good portion of that parking lot. So you will lose, say half the apartments. But then you're asking me to have people turn into an apartment parking lot and then come up in and try to sell them a home in a little, what you want to be a gated community in a special place that's really different than the apartments. As nice as I can make those apartments, they're a very different thing than this.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Miller.
Excuse me, I just had a quick question. This wasn't real clear before, so that line of trees between the apartments and where the single-family home is actually a wash area.
It's a small wash area. I think it's not a regulated wash, but it's really a nice little wash, got nice features to it. It's probably that wide and a lot of vegetation down through it. This is a very heavily vegetated piece of land, and of course we've got to move. There's 121 saguaros, and I've got to move about half of those. I'm saving every one of them and the barrels and like 75 trees, so I've got a lot of vegetation to work with. And which is why the perimeter is going to get really heavily vegetated, all native. I don't care what people do inside their courtyard, but I want, when somebody walks down this street, I love how you walk through Mercado and you see a little look into someone's courtyard, and there's a fountain and a sitting space, and maybe there's a lemon tree, and there's a high wall out front, and really like that. And then don't do all the courtyard walls the same. Some might be an old colored plaster, and some are might be a mud adobe, and some might be mortar wash slump with a brick cap. The idea is not to go, here there's 3 choices and here you can pick 2 tiles. Being a small builder, I would call these semi-custom because they're not full custom, but you come in and you pick a floor plan, and then being I'm as small as I am, it's really easy to give people what they want. So it's really different than what the tract builders are doing. Yet, being small, I can compete with those guys. I'm not charging much more than they do, but it's always why I've kept busy and been able to sell homes easily is, I think, price point. Now, the other thing to really focus on here is that what's driving this is I'm sandwiched between the CR5 apartments to my south and the townhome project to my north. Now, the townhome project to my north, I know that builder. He says he plans on going through with it. His last 2 projects were townhome projects, and they're both rental projects. He hasn't decided if this is part rental, all rental, no rental. I couldn't really get that out of him. It is gated, and it does come out on McCarty. You go over here to Highgate, which there's 41 homes. It's gated. It's a very nice little community. It was a production builder, I believe, that did that. It's a very nice, quiet subdivision. You don't really notice it being there. So the argument about, okay, just take the road and push it out here, I think to anybody that doesn't do this for a living probably looks at that and goes, hey, that's totally doable. Why can't you do that? Well, the whole argument of you should push the road out there, first they said, well, there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to go to school, and they're going to drive back through the neighborhood to get to Mesa Verde. Well, Highgate has 3 kids in 2 families that go to Mesa Verde. And it wouldn't matter if you did drive out to La Cholla, they'd simply go back down and right back up McCarty. The other thing that they want you to believe in their argument, and Gary Deckard, I'm sure, is going to make his case for this. And by the way, Gary's been a very pleasant guy to deal with. We disagree, but I like the guy, and I really hope that he ends up liking this. I'm sorry, one last thing. If you would just take a moment to look at this. This is our project. This yellow line is what they say is going to happen. They say people are going to come out of my subdivision, and instead of turning left and going right down here to La Cholla, which is 600 or 700 feet. They're going to wind over a mile through that subdivision to get to La Cañada because they say it's dangerous to turn left on La Cholla.
It is.
That's really the whole argument. Now, so talk to the people that are here that live in Highgate. They'll tell you nobody in Highgate does that because it's a long, winding road through that neighborhood, and it's not nice roads. So that's really the bulk of it. I can speak to the compromises that you asked me to make. I think we have all along. We took the two-story out of it. We kept the units down. We had a CR5 zoning request. We changed to CR4. Brenda Young, who is the one person that lives closest to this, her house is 310 feet from my closest house. That's a football field away. And I said, Brenda, I will offer you landscape approval on that corner of the subdivision. You put all the trees you want if it bothers you to look at our homes. I even offered to go over and landscape Brenda's side yard to put hot bushes, mesquites, palo verdes, somebody, it likes to be desert, but something to screen her yard from the road because that was her concern. She did get a wall from the townhome project to my north. They agreed to build her a wall when they built because they're directly across from her. So really, I think the whole thing just comes down to everyone asking me to combine this road, and all I'll tell you is I'm too small a builder to take that gamble. I think if I failed at that, I can't absorb that. I'm too small. I'm big enough to do this, but I'm not big enough to handle a hit of, look right across La Cholla. There's 20 lots that were put in 10 years ago. You can see them here, Sonoran Hill Court, not one home. Mostly probably because they tried to do too expensive a home on La Cholla. That would be my guess. There's a few other things. Topography is a tough one there too. But there's a failed subdivision that somebody's sitting there paying taxes on. Right up here on the corner of McCarty and La Cholla, there's 4 lots that have been planned for, I think, 6 years. They haven't put the roads in, probably because nobody wants to go build bigger homes right there. You look up La Cholla and it's a lot of density.
Again, stick to your project.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Miller.
I think that's mostly what I have for you.
I had one more question. I think I read in the background material that you're doing some improvements on McCarty Road.
Right, it's a reseal McCarty Road.
Okay, so you're doing a complete reseal.
Right,
and
and
where,
I'm working.
could you show us on the map where you're doing that?
I believe it's from the intersection at Dawn, right
Oh, so
on down, so it's beyond my property, and then I'm working with TEP right now to try to put the utilities underground, and I haven't got an answer back, which that benefits everybody. Nobody likes the overhead utilities.
So is this like a chip seal that you're doing? on it?
I think they're going to look at it, and the county's going to determine what I need to do with it.
Okay, okay, so you are doing that section of road?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a number of speakers. You have 3 minutes. We ask that you abide by the rules of civility and not be repetitive. Davia Cohen. Welcome.
Good morning, and it's Davia.
Okay.
I'm here to just to, I guess, first let me introduce myself. I'm Davia Cohen, and I live at Highgate, and that's the community that Mike spoke about. I'm also the president of our HOA, and I wanted to just step up and let you know that our HOA is in full agreement with what he's proposing, and we are all for it. We have no complaints. So I did want to present the board with some signatures from our HOA.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair?
Supervisor Miller.
Could you point out which one is, oh, it's over here. Okay, I just saw it. I was looking too close. I got it. Thank you.
You got it? Okay. Thank you.
All right, Roger Spring.
Good morning. I'm Roger Spring. I live at 8357 North Starfinder Place in the Highgate community. Here to speak in support of the proposal. My wife and I agree with your planning commission and your staff that we think this is the appropriate way to proceed with this project. And we think that way for 4 reasons. First, it's a unique location. As Mike's already shared with you, the acreage is small, and it's been fairly designed with the highest value possible for the neighborhood. Some residents have insisted on a solution that restricts access to and from the property by La Cholla only. This would severely limit the use of the property to an option such as a high-density, high-traffic apartments, and we have enough of those buildings already in our immediate area. Second, the current plan is the best use for the property. It includes a mix of custom, quality-built homes in a small gated community in the upper portion of the property that would have access to McCarty, as well as 3 multifamily buildings in the lower portion of the property with access to and from La Cholla. Third, the development as planned may actually increase our property values. Unlike other neighboring subdivisions built by national production type home builders, Kachina Homes is a long-established Tucson-based small builder who's built a strong reputation on quality products. And then finally, traffic impacts must be addressed. The best solution for the neighborhood to maintain our peaceful and less than ideal current county roads is for no development whatsoever. That's not really an option here. The plan will put more traffic into our neighborhood, and we encourage you very strongly to work with the Pima County Department of Transportation to do several things. One is the trees that Brian mentioned on La Cholla in the median, the 13 trees that are there, literally block traffic. You cannot see it when you're sitting at McCarty and wanting to turn right or left. And I did bring photographs that I'll leave with you that if your teenage daughter or your 82-year-old grandfather were sitting at that intersection and looking to the north, and you have to decide whether or not you're going to cross 4 lanes of traffic, many of them going 60 miles an hour, we'll let you be the judge. But those trees ought to be trimmed down to nothing, and low-profile plants should replace them. As Brian mentioned, the speed zone indicator is something we asked for. It sounds like that will work, and also just an assessment of the current life of the McCarty Avenue and Don Drive and other neighborhood streets to see what could be done. We trust the process. We know you'll make a decision that may not be popular at all, but in the end, we think it's going to be the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Dickert?
Good morning, all. My name is Gary Dickert, and I live at 8161 North Boreal Drive, which is just a couple blocks from the proposed development. My wife and I have been residents there for over 34 years. During that time, we raised our 3 children who have now left home, but they have fond memories of this area. While they were growing up, they were able to enjoy a high quality of life in which they were able to safely ride bikes in the neighborhood and even walk over to Mesa Verde School without a significant concern for vehicular traffic. Just as our family has grown and changed, so has the neighborhood. 2 of those changes in the last 10 years included the Club Carmel apartments and the La Cholla Vista homes. We knew that over time change was inevitable, but I would like to point out that both of these changes fell into a category of what I classify controlled compromise change. Both of those developments brought a large increase of residents to the area, but since the access to both of them was limited to what is now Old McGee Road, it resulted in minimal increase of vehicular traffic to the neighborhood. We have seen walkers, joggers, parents pushing strollers, and bicycle riders in the vicinity, and it's really brought a positive energy to the neighborhood. Right now, the Lennar development is in process of being built along the north boundary of the neighborhood, which will result in the construction of over 100 homes, which will again increase the number of residents in the neighborhood. However, once again, this concept of controlled compromise change is applicable. All access for this development will be limited to Overton Road, which will result in limited increase in vehicular traffic in the area. These three instances I've documented show significant changes which have or are occurring in our section. In all of them, the traffic pattern has been established which limits the vehicular traffic in the neighborhood. I am looking for this concept of controlled, compromised change to be applied to the Kachina development. Please continue this pattern that has been established in these three most recent developments and require the Kachina development to limit all access only from La Cholla. The main reason we were granted a continuance was to reach an agreement on this critical issue. Sadly, after 2 meetings with the developer, it was determined that he was not willing to budge on this matter. We acknowledge this plot will be developed, but we need your help to ensure that it is a controlled, compromised change to continue the positive quality of life we all enjoy. Please limit the traffic to access from La Cholla only. By doing this, I believe we can have a development while still preserving the integrity of the neighborhood. The already deteriorating roads in this neighborhood were never meant to be a thoroughfare. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Now I have Johan Gemmel.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Board of Supervisors. I'm here on behalf of Ms. Brenda Young, who is unable to attend this morning, so I'd like to read her letter into the record. Board of Supervisors. At the Board of Supervisors meeting on November 21st, 2017, Supervisor Miller requested a continuance to allow the neighbors and the developer to work together to create an acceptable solution to the ingress-egress issue on the Kachina project. The first meeting we had with the developer on December 20th was very negative. The developer said that only concession would be that construction vehicles would ingress-egress under La Cholla Boulevard. The developer further let us know that there would be no compromise when it came to ingress-egress issues for the residential traffic. The developer also stated that if neighbors didn't like this project, they would sell the property and someone else could put in apartments. I, Ms. Young in this case, have stated my concerns for the project, that the residential traffic is going to be too much for our neighborhood. All that the neighbors have asked is the developer have residential traffic ingress and egress out until La Cholla Boulevard. So at this time, since the developer is unwilling to compromise on the ingress-egress issue, I, again, Ms. Young, would rather have them sell the property and risk having apartments developed on the property because the residential access and exit would be only to La Cholla Boulevard, and there would be a 6-foot perimeter wall to limit access onto McCarty Road. I'm, and again, Ms. Young, am disappointed that the developer was not interested in working with the neighbors. We, the neighbors, were willing to work with the developer, but the developer does not seem to be interested in listening to our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy Sandlin, I mean. Betsy?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Honorable Supervisors, at her request, I would like to read an email Marion Munsinger, a proximate resident to this proposed development, sent to me yesterday before I read my letter into the record. Marion wrote, "It is the consensus of the Dawn and McCarty neighborhood that it would be best for all concerned for the Kachina development to use their existing access to La Cholla for Kachina. I am recovering from back problems and unable to attend the meeting, so please consider the impact this additional traffic will have on the neighborhood if this additional traffic goes through McCarty Road." That's Marion's. And from me, Betsy Sandlin, resident of Section 27. Honorable Supervisors, the residents of Section 27 are deeply concerned about Kachina's present development plan. Like all recent development plans in the past 20-plus years, this plan is for denser zoning than the original zoning, and it is on the periphery of the section with sanctioned ingress-egress onto an underutilized major roadway. Every one of these developments zoned into the periphery, Lennar at Overton Reserve, Pulte at La Cholla Vista, Santa Fe Park, Pilato Place, Utilize the major roadway rather than the interior streets of the section for both construction and residence. Lennar at Overton actually bought additional land for access to the 58-acre parcel and agreed after extensive negotiations with the residents to have even its more expensive homes on the 18-acre parcel exit through the larger 40-acre development in order to keep traffic out of the interior of the section. But Mr. Arnold is only willing to use La Cholla for construction, and for the residents of the apartments, he intends to build at the base of the hill, and he is not willing or able to alter the plans so that 25 semi-custom homes might use La Cholla. The proximate residents on McCarty and Dawn and other residents have clearly expressed their objections. It's encouraging to note that the residents aren't the only Americans concerned about what's going on, and I will hand you an article on January 3rd from the New York Times talking about homeowners have expanded their claim on the world beyond their lot lines. Neighbors are increasingly defend not just individual buildings, but also a broader sense of neighborhood character. Please give these residents the careful consideration they deserve as you decide on the future of our neighborhood. Thank you once again for this opportunity to support our neighbors, especially those who will be most adversely affected if this plan is approved, and to share their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. William Hunter, and then final speaker, Donna Heidinger.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you
morning.
for this opportunity.
Yep, it's still morning.
I'm reading for Karen Farnham, who couldn't come she had a doctor's appointment, but she lives in an adjacent neighborhood to the north of this. It is my understanding that efforts to reach an agreement between Kachina and the homeowners most directly affected by the above proposed project have reached an impasse regarding road access to the planned 25 semi-custom homes at the top of the hill. I fail to understand how the Lennar project, the development most immediately affecting the retirement community in which I live and which Jim Campbell spearheaded, was able to come to terms satisfactory to the surrounding neighborhoods, and yet Kachina's representatives cannot seem to find it in their hearts to behave in the same exemplary manner, referring instead to dig in their heels on this issue. Developers of every other medium or high-density development that have been rezoned on the periphery of the section have also found ways to enter and exit onto major roadways, McGee, Old McGee, La Cholla, or Overton. There is no vehicular access to the interior of the section from any of their developments. How is it that these other developers were able to make adjustments to their plans while Kachina seems unwilling or unable to do so? What makes Kachina so special that they cannot follow the example of the other developers who were able to complete their projects without turning upside down the lives of the surrounding neighbors? The eventual homeowners of the Lennar custom homes at the south end of the Jackson property will have much further to drive in that they will be required to drive through the new Lennar neighborhood to the north in order to enter and exit via Overton Road. It seems entirely reasonable to me, Ms. Farnham, that the future residents of the 25 homes at the top of the hill should enter and exit via La Cholla. The La Cholla access was already zoned for the parcel which Kachina purchased. So what is Kachina's problem or logic concerning using La Cholla as access to their new development? If Kachina is trying to spare the projected homeowners at the top of the hill from having to drive past Kachina's apartments at the bottom before reaching their homes, then just maybe they should not be building those apartments. I stand beside the existing homeowners near Kachina's proposed project in asking that the supervisors require this accommodation by Kachina. If Kachina had been at all sensitive to the needs and comments of the proximate neighbors of their proposed development, a decision by the supervisors would not be necessary. If Kachina can't follow the examples of other developers and do the right thing on their own, I would ask that the supervisors then make the right decision for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna?
Good morning, Chair Bronson, Supervisors Miller and Elias and Valadez and Christie and, well, the administrator's not here. We have worked a long time on this. I've attended the meetings. The residents never demanded there be no development. They fully understand that this parcel will be developed. It's not unusual for infrastructure to lag a little bit behind development, especially on the northwest side of town. And those interior roadways really do need restoration, upgrading, maintenance in order to, well, they don't do well with the traffic they've got. Additional traffic is going to be a load on them. Sometimes the denser developments that have gone in around the periphery and in the center there in the Lennar development have diluted the primary use of this area, which is semi-rural horse property. And that affects the ambiance of the neighborhood. Whereas some people did say, you know, they'd rather have apartments, I think in general, an all-apartment use of that parcel is not the best one. We have, I guess the resident, they're at an impasse with this transportation issue. As I said in my letter, they know about the transportation. The residents themselves go over to La Cañada when McCarty and La Cholla have become so jammed, and that's during peak hours, where it's really hard to go south. You can, and even the stacking lane to make a U-turn on La Cholla builds up. And they do, and they admit it. They all go through the neighborhood to get to La Cañada. So they're asking to not approve anything denser than a CR4 rezoning, which the developers agreed to, and add a special condition to the rezoning, which requires the developer to use his own access on La Cholla for all construction vehicles, which would be over 1 ton, and to use that access as well as access for the single-family resident part of the development, which would enable them to put a solid wall around McCarty, and that's what the residents are seeking. It's hard to know who has the best idea. You know, I see this issue from everybody's view, and I can only tell you that the residents are pretty well determined that they really don't want any more traffic on McCarty. And I would answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, thank you.
As a housekeeping issue, I mentioned in my letter that I hadn't received a reply from Brian. I know where my head was, but it actually came in at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and somehow I was on my PC as opposed to my iPads, and I missed it. So I'll just give you this as an addendum to what I submitted, because I did get my answer in time. I just didn't know it.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's the final speaker. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
It's a really difficult issue because it's fairly obvious that this is a situation where I think a developer has tried to communicate his plans and advocate for his own use of that property. And you could see that having a medium-sized builder is probably really good on this project and will enhance the neighborhood and the product that they're going to build there. Unfortunately, you weren't able to come to any kind of conclusion about egress and ingress on this property, and it's difficult to do that. But nobody wants to agree, but everybody agrees to disagree. And so, unfortunately, I think that people do have property rights, and you are certainly in conformance with all the other zoning that surrounds it. This is not a property that's influenced by the land conservation system, although that wash on it is in a difficult spot, I think, and that's a very narrow opening that you have for it, and recognize that you're going to have some wildlife in there too that's going to come up along that wash. And so that's something that's going to impact the residents of your homes and those apartments into the future. So, you know, I would just caution you on all of that. And certainly it's not my district, but I always have tried to be very concerned about neighbors and neighborhood issues, and this one is particularly difficult because it's just a matter of larger size developments continuing to move further north, and the reality that the market for single-family homes is not what it was in the past. And so the fact is that apartments need to be built for families to be able to live in as well. And so those are difficult things that are just at odds with each other.
Madam
Supervisor Miller.
You know, my concern here, of course, this is a very difficult situation. I do like the fact that you agreed to have all of your construction traffic go through La Cholla versus the neighborhood. Something that wasn't clear in the last meeting is that there is in fact a wash here, so it doesn't make that access as easy as what we originally thought when I looked at this plan. The thing that I've heard is that it's very dangerous pulling out onto La Cholla from multiple people here this morning. And so even if this development had access out onto La Cholla, there is again a concern of residential traffic pulling, numerous vehicles pulling out onto that road during rush hour traffic, which seems to be the concern. I do like the fact that you are going to do improvements to McCarty Road, which was not real clear to me at the last point. And just a point of clarification from Development Services representatives. That McCarty Road, what is the traffic capacity and what are they currently at right now? Or I guess that would be from DOT.
Or whoever has the answer. Actually, it should have been in the report.
I didn't.
Madam Chair, it'll take me a couple minutes to find it within the report. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't recall what that was.
Does transportation know offhand?
Madam Chair and Board Supervisor, not offhand, no.
But is that road at capacity? I don't, if I recall, it was not.
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, no, it is probably not a capacity.
And there's discussion of some sort of speed limiting, I guess, signs, stop signs, some sort of traffic control.
The traffic control, please address that.
Yeah, if you remember from the report, they talked about putting a three-way stop at Don and McCartney, so that is still an option. The speed limit signs, the feedback signs, we are going to install on La Cholla as you approach the area.
Okay, and that's for, you're going to put that on that where McCarty comes out to meet La Cholla, is that what you're talking about?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, yes, that is correct. We will investigate in that area.
Okay, and with the concession of single-story homes going to CR4, you know, this is a very difficult decision, but I think with the improvements that you've agreed to do and with the not accessing that during construction, which seemed to be the biggest concern in the last board meeting, that unfortunately these properties do get developed, and I understand your concerns, and I would like to see continuing dialogue between the developer and the neighbors to ensure that when issues arise that they are addressed. With that, this is very difficult because now we have to make that decision, but I'm going to move to close the public hearing and move approval of this item, which is P17RZ00004, Michael and Linda Arnold Family Trust on North La Cholla Boulevard rezoning, subject to the CR4 mixed dwelling zone, subject to standard and special conditions as recommended by staff as well as by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I would like to, I'm not sure if those traffic controls, were those in the standard and special conditions as previously?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Miller, those were not previously part of the record. What was brought up at the November meeting is a recommendation to include condition 2E that you're referencing, that should read, all site improvement construction vehicles, we want to add over 1 ton capacity, shall be limited to La Cholla access. So that was part of the record in November, but not the.
So you want to add the additional condition?
I would like to add condition 2E to the standard and special conditions as recommended by staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And that is the stop sign and the traffic control on La Cholla. Is that correct?
The vegetation.
The construction
And the vegetation.
Taking it down.
And the vegetation.
Yep. Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item 16. This is a hearing, type 3 conditional use, permit construction and demolition, landfill, and composting and recycling. Supervisor Christie, you had a question?
I'd just like to have the principals here make a statement as to how they are approaching this project.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisor Christie, Valadez, Miller, Elias. Thank you for having me. How we're approaching
Could you
this
state your name just for the
my
record?
name's Jason
Or
Tankersley.
the clerk will not forgive me, so.
My name is Jason Tankersley. I'm the CEO of the Fairfax Companies and owner. So this is a mixed-use project. We have, I have built my company around recycling, construction, and landscape waste. We operate several facilities throughout Tucson.
You're doing double duty today?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian's my man. So this particular facility will be very similar to our facility that we have in the middle of Tucson. Right now at Speedway and Prudence, we have the Speedway construction debris recycling facility. And we are replicating that project on this site. And this site also will allow us to relocate our current composting operation from INA and I-10 to a more rural, isolated area, one that actually serves better because of the water uses that we have on the site. And we feel it's a great place for us to grow. We see that the area is expanding to the south, and now that Wilmot is connected to Sahuarita Road, we feel that it's a great complement to the industrial developments going on out there. Also with the residential that's happening in the Sahuarita, they can filter material to us for our landscape waste recycling operations and composting.
So you're compatible basically with the industrial uses is what you're saying?
I think so. Across
Okay.
the street's a large solar array going to be built by TEP, and just north of that is a new prison that's going in, and just north of that are several other prisons. I think it's kind of a good area, and we're actually surrounded. This property is an island that actually isolates it because it's surrounded by state grazing land, and there's additional 100 acres to the north that's all 100-year floodplain and pretty much undevelopable.
Yep, so compatible. Okay, thanks.
Madam Chair, I don't know if there's anyone speaking against it here.
No.
I would urge the board to support this project. I've received a number of letters of support from various people throughout the community, particularly stakeholders in that particular area. There is one thing I would like to ask Mr. Tankersley, is that as this project progresses, that you still reach out to the adjacent community if there are either residential, potential residential developments or actual residential developments, that you continue a dialogue with them on an ongoing basis to make sure that there are no issues that are not unaddressed, and that you keep in contact with them to make sure that if they have concerns or issues with what is going on with your project, that you maintain that open communication with them and do your very best to address them. I know there's certain developments that might be coming in the short term that might have some interaction with you, and I would just hope that you continue to do that.
Right. Last night I reached out to some of those stakeholders, and we agreed to have an open dialogue. We're very familiar with operating with residential communities all around us. We have two high-density residential operations or residences right on our south boundary on Speedway and Prudence, and then we have a neighborhood and was a K through 8 grade school on our other border. So we're very familiar with working with the community.
Great. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to move to close the public hearing and ask for approval of the Type 3 conditional use permit construction and demolition landfill and composting and recycling, number P17CU00011, Fairfax Companies LSE, South Wilmot Road. Approval subject to the standard and special conditions of the hearing administrator and to follow their recommendation.
And planning and zoning in the hearing. There's motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. Good to see you, Mr. Tankersley. Now we move on to item 17. We have no speakers. What's the pleasure of the board? Supervisor Christie.
Madam Chair, I'd like to close the public hearing on this issue.
Bye-bye.
And ask that we pass the rezoning time extension of C09-02-24 Fidelity Title Agency Trust 10930 et al. Kolb Road rezoning request of Lewis I-10 Kolb LLP, represented by MJM Consulting Incorporated, and approve the staff recommendations of an approval of a 5-year time extension subject to original and modified conditions.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. We're on to transportation hearings. Items 18. We do have one speaker. Edward Cizik.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm here today to express my concerns about the long-term maintenance of the addition of county roads at Jeffrey and Teton Roads as described in item 18 of today's agenda. In the memoranda provided by Mr. Huckleberry and staff, the funding source for long-term maintenance of the road is out of general operating funds. However, as has been discussed the last several meetings, the supervisors have largely agreed that funding for road maintenance is currently far from adequate to fix the roads that we currently already have, even if the supervisors don't have agreement on how to fund this shortfall, whether by cuts elsewhere in the budget or by raising additional revenues. We already have, based on what I've heard in previous meetings from Chair Bronson, read in the budget document, somewhere between $600 and $800 million in road repair projects throughout Pima County, and at this time we're spending about $8 to $10 million on road maintenance and repair each year to address these. At the current rates and considering normal wear and tear, it's going to take somewhere between, if I can do the math correctly, 100 years and never going to happen that our roads are all going to be brought up to standards at current budget allocations. Certainly some of this issues with the legislature and the HERF issues and other sources of funding that are being squeezed, but the supervisors do have the responsibility to make these decisions. What I want to ask the board today is whether it's necessary to build both of these road projects and whether it might be in the prudent long-term interest of the county to compromise with this village, with the Diablo Village neighborhood, to only build one of the two to perhaps lower our budget expenditures and our long-term maintenance obligations. I realize that the building these county roads to Valhalla Road is in the interests of the community, and I don't want to disrespect that, but I don't want us to be here 10, 15 years from now when these roads are starting to wear down, the neighborhood interests are start saying, where's the money for road repair, as we are currently seeing in many other neighborhoods and areas throughout Pima County currently. In the longer run, I do want to point out that we have the RTA to build new roads, but we don't have such a source for maintenance. And I realize that this is not part of the agenda item, so I know that this part can't be discussed at this meeting. But I do want to consider whether the board should put to the voters in November whether to recharacterize the RTA we currently have to allow it to build, repair roads rather than just build new ones. Or to allocate as is decreed necessary by the supervisors. And I think that would create some additional operating revenues to fund the critical road repairs that we no doubt have throughout Pima County without raising existing tax rates. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would note that this is the establishment of the road. It's not the building of the road. And I would assume, Mr. DeBonis, that was at the request of somebody.
Madam Chair, Supervisors, so the construction of both of these roads was at the request of the developer for Diablo Village.
Okay.
And if I may, so our county subdivision street standards do promote having multiple points of access into these neighborhoods. And as you just heard from one of the prior discussion topics, that's generally favorable for the circulation within the area. So we're well aware, as this board has initiated a number of conversations on the overall topic of road maintenance. The state statutes are such that if roads are built, public roads are built to the adopted county standard, then the county must accept them for maintenance. So.
Thank you. There are no other speakers. I'm going to move to close the public hearing and approve Resolution 2018-4. Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 19. This is a hearing environmental assessment. I'll move the item. Second. Motion and a second. Any objections? What? I did. What? I'm sorry. Close the public hearing. Motion and a second to approve and close the public hearing. Any objections? Who was the second? I think it was Richard. There are no objection, motion carries. Moving on to the addendum agenda. We've done items through item 7. We're now on item 8 for public records request. I put this on. We had instructed the board in August to bring something back. Mr. Huckleberry, what's the status?
Madam Chair, we have issued a request for proposals for an e-discovery system. That system got entirely too complicated and too costly. We canceled that RFP. We've issued a new one clarifying what we can actually obtain, and that should go through our procurement process, or it's in the middle of being actually released now, and so we'll have a better update with regard to, electronic public records request compliance. And if the board would like, I can probably update you with a memorandum on all the points that were raised in that original discussion.
I would direct you to do so. And do you have, at this juncture, a ETA about when we might expect, with this, you're doing an RFP, when we might see an actual contract being awarded?
Madam Chair, typically I think you're going to see probably 60 days, although it depends upon the response to the proposal and whether that response is appropriate to what we've asked for. So my guess is that we should have some pretty good ideas within the next 60 to 90 days regarding going forward with an electronic, we'll say, records compliance process.
Thank you. So direction is to proceed, to give us a memo, and then that memo will be a public record. So if anybody, any resident of Pima County or anyone has questions about the content of that memo, it will be available both on our website and available through the clerk's office.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Miller.
I just wanted some clarification just to make sure I understand. So we have, Mr. Huckleberry's got an RFP for an electronic public records system, and then you're also going to put together a process for how this system is to work that will come back before the board?
Madam Chair
At the time
and
of
Supervisor
contract.
Miller, yes. I mean, the process now, we get keyword searches that basically can be absolutely irrelevant to the issue being addressed, and so we need a more intelligent electronic, and you can almost call it artificial intelligence system to narrow the 130,000 responses we get back down to 10,000 are responsive, and then be able to manage those appropriately. And that's historically been the difficulty is how to manage this huge data dump.
And are there, I'm sure you've done research on this, are there systems out there that actually can accomplish that? Okay.
Much better than we can today, yes.
Okay, great. Thank
And
you.
I think the other issue was redaction and how to redact. That was another time consuming.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, any other comments, direction? Let's move on to item 9 and resolution 2018-5, Supervisor Elias.
Madam Chair, I'm really pleased to put this on here because the moment has arrived. It's extremely timely given the discussion that's going on nationally surrounding DACA and the fact that this deeply affects people here in Pima County. And if you talk to DACA applicants, the first words out of their mouth will be, yes, we need to have DACA, but we need to have resolution for the 12 million people who are living in the shadows in this country in addition to DACA. And I think that is the right and proper position. The DREAM Act was originally introduced in 1991. That means the original dreamers are now in their 40s. And yet, they're told to wait some more. And in the past week, as conversations and negotiations have gone on between the White House and Congress, we've seen nothing but carnival-like tactics and vulgar language and, frankly, all kinds of chicanery that does nothing to provide any security to this country or to the young people who are affected by DACA or their families. That's very sad. And there was a discussion earlier saying that this has nothing to do with folks here in Pima County. I've been a county supervisor for 16 years, and I have watched the issue of immigration affect us every single day. It affects us in public safety. It affects us in our health department. It affects us in our courts. It affects us in every facet of our operation. And most regrettably, it affects us at forensic science, where we hold the bodies of those folks who have died without any identification on them, and their families don't know what has happened. It's time for all of this baloney to end. It's time for this board to take a stand on DACA specifically, because this is something concrete that will help out 800,000 Americans, basically, and it's important that we make a stand here and we let our congressional people know that. And so without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and move item 9, including resolution 2018, number 5.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Miller.
I agree with Supervisor Elias that it's time to address DACA. I don't support the continuation of DACA. What I think it is, it's time for Congress to get off their butts and finally get something done on comprehensive immigration reform, addressing these 800,000 people. As we know, this was passed, DACA was under executive order during the, an executive order issued by President Obama. President Trump has revoked that executive order, which has forced Congress to finally take some action, and hopefully they do, because these people have been in limbo. There was a question as to whether that executive order was constitutional, so they've always been in limbo and living in fear. Finally, you know, I think that there needs to be negotiation, and it needs to include addressing border security, including chain migration, the lottery program, where people from underrepresented countries can just come into the country based on a lottery. The wall funding has to be an integral part of the agreement, and funding of other resources, whether it's electronic technology, Border Patrol, et cetera, has to be integrated into this process. And while I agree with Supervisor Elias about the fact that these people are all left in limbo, and I can't support this with just a continuation of DACA. This has to be addressed once and for all, and these people need to come to the table. Everyone has an opportunity, and if they fail to do it, shame on them. So I can't support the resolution as written, but I totally agree with the spirit of this that finally needs to be addressed by Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Madam,
Supervisor Elias.
I would just say that I understand DACA is not the answer to everything, but this is a particular subset of folks who have suffered really unfairly outside of the choices they made in their own life. Now, I understand that. But quite honestly, to see the DREAM Act and the DACistas extorted with their own future to fund a wall that's unnecessary, unwanted, and will only serve to inhibit the economic vitality of the borderlands, I think is ludicrous. So I appreciate your comments, Ms. Miller, and agreeing with us, because I know that you have a good heart on this particular issue, but no, that can't be done. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, I'll call the question. Roll call.
Supervisor Christie?
No.
Supervisor Elias?
Aye.
Supervisor Miller?
No.
Supervisor Valdez?
Aye.
Chair Bronson?
Aye. Motion carries 3-2. Moving on to treasurer certificates of abatement. Actually, for the remaining on the on the addendum agenda, items 10 through 19. Is anybody wish to divide the question? No? I'll move those items. Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Back to item 9 on the regular agenda. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Valdez.
Madam Chair, reference to item 9, I move that the Supervisor Elias be the chair, myself the vice chair, and yourself the acting chair.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any objections? I have absolutely no objections. There are no objection, motion carries. That brings us to the end of today's meeting. We're adjourned, and we will see you. When's our next meeting?
It is going to be February the 7th.
February the...
I'm sorry. The 6th of January.